Hey guys, in this video we're going to talk about the anatomy of brachial plexus and its injuries. So what is brachial plexus? You guys know that in the spinal cord, once you want to get your nerves out, you're gonna form your spinal nerve by union of sensory root and ventral root. The sensory root is the dorsal one, and the motor root is the ventral one. So once they unite together, they will form the spinal nerve, which is a mixed nerve, and it's a ready nerve to supply the destination. That spinal nerve is going to give you posterior ramus, which is going to take care of your trunk, and it will give you ventral ramus, which is going to take care of your ventrolateral aspect of your body. So once you get your ventral ramus, you're going to form plexi, and these plexi are going to take care of the regions they want to supply. We have a cervical plexus that takes care of the neck. We have brachial plexus that takes care of the upper limb. And since we're talking about the upper limb, we're going to talk about the brachial plexus. And then we have the lumbar and sacral plexi, or plexuses, and they are going to take care of your lower limbs. So basically, the brachial plexus is a group of roots that are going to unite together by ventral rami of C5 to T1. So once we have the ventral rami of C5, C6, C7, C8 and T1, they are going to unite together to form trunks, 3 trunks, one superior, one middle and one inferior, and then by divisions we are going to have ventral divisions to form the cords, and we're going to have posterior divisions to form posterior cord. And once we form the cords, we're going to get all of the terminal branches. But before we get into that, we will also have branches out of the roots, and we're going to have also branches out of the trunk, which is only one trunk. And as we proceed, we're going to talk about them into details. So basically, your brachial plexus is formed by union of C5, C6, and the first two are going to form your superior trunk or upper trunk. And then C7 is going to be all alone in the center because we only have 5. So if the first two are going to unite together and the lower two are going to unite together, so you're going to have C5 without any union. It's going to be all alone, and that will give you your middle trunk. So you have the superior, which is C7 and C6. You have the middle, which is 5 and 6. You have the middle, which is C7 alone, and then you have the inferior, which is C8 and T1. And once you have that, you need to divide them into ventral and posterior divisions. Ventral, dorsal, or anterior and posterior divisions. So the anterior divisions of the superior and middle trunk will give you lateral cord. And then because these two united together, now the lower trunk doesn't have anything to unite with, so the anterior division will continue all alone and it will give you the medial cord. Alright, now so the superior and middle will unite, ventral divisions of them, to give you the lateral cord. The inferior trunk will continue its anterior division as medial cord, and 3 of them will give posterior divisions, and these divisions will form the posterior cord. Now we are saying lateral, posterior and medial. It's lateral to who, posterior to who, or medial to who? We are explaining them in reference to the axillary artery. So basically, you guys, the axillary artery is here, right? So here you have the axillary artery. Okay, so the lateral cord is lateral to it, the posterior cord is posterior to it, and the medial cord is medial to it. All right, so we had 5 roots. The first 2 made superior trunk, the middle one made middle trunk, and the lower 2 made inferior trunk. And then we had anterior divisions from all of them and posterior divisions from all of them. The posterior divisions of all of them, they made posterior cord, posterior to the axillary artery. And then anterior divisions of the first 2 only made the lateral cord, and then the inferior cord, the inferior trunk alone, its anterior division made medial cord. Now we need to know the terminal branches, and also we need to know the branches of the roots. Now, how many branches do we have after all? We have only two. You guys can find in literature more than that. You can find in books more than that. But this is what we need in medical schools. These are the branches that we need to know them. These are the main ones. All right. So you will have mainly dorsal scapular. We have, okay, now let's say the number and then we get and proceed into the names. We have two nerves of the roots. We have two nerves of trunks, which is only the superior trunk, and then the rest of them are going to be from the cords. From the cords, we have three branches from the lateral cord, and then five, and then five. All right? Now, what are the branches and how can we remember them? Now, remember, guys, that now, first of all, we have from C5 here, dorsal scapular nerve, all right? We have from C5 the dorsal scapular nerve, and from C5, 6, and 7 we have the long thoracic nerve, and another name to that is the nerve to serratus anterior. So we have two branches of the roots, from the first root and then from first, second, and third roots, which are C5, 6, and 7. The first one gives me dorsal scapular, C5, C6, C7 gives me long thoracic nerve. Now you can notice that the branches we have from the roots and the branches we have from the trunks are coming from the superior people. All right, so the dorsal scapular, C5 alone, root, you have C5, 6, and 7 roots, it gives you long thoracic. Only two. Only two, mainly two. All right, now from the superior trunk, we have two branches. All right, and these branches are coming from the superior root. So here we have two, and here we have two. And then once we come to the cords, we will have 3, 5, and 5. Now, what are the nerves? The nerves are the dorsal scapular, like I just said, and the long thoracic nerve. So how can I remember that? Now think about it, guys. Now we talked about all the muscles and nerves, and I told you if your spinal cord is running here and you have muscles here, remember your rhomboid minor and major and levator scapulae, I told you this is a muscle that is attached to the scapula and it runs dorsally. So that's why it makes sense that the nerve supply of these muscles is called dorsal scapular nerve. Another thing, now your roots are just forming. So it makes sense that you want to send your nerve right here because this is just near to you. So it makes sense that the root that is coming here, which is C5, is gonna send its branch before we form the trunks and cords and terminal branches, because the muscles are just next to me. So why do I need to go all the way to the branches and I come back? All right, so dorsal scapular nerve is a branch of C5. And then the other nerve is the long thoracic or nerve to serratus anterior. It's going to come from C5, 6, and 7, and you're going to find it running on the lateral border here of your serratus anterior muscle. And I'm going to show you how it looks like on a cadaver. All right, so the two branches you have are the dorsal of the roots, are the dorsal scapular nerve, and then the long thoracic nerve or nerve to serratus anterior. Now, what are the branches of the superior trunk and how can we memorize them? Remember that, you guys, the superior trunk starts with SU letter, and the only two nerves you have is the nerve to subclavius and the suprascapular nerve. Someone will come and tell me, all right, but I've learned that we have the subscapular nerve. So how can I remember that? Remember that the subscapular nerve that we've learned in the previous videos, it has upper and lower branches. So it doesn't start with the letter SU. It starts with upper subscapular nerve and lower subscapular nerve. So it doesn't apply to our theory here or our rule here. All right, so remember that the superior trunk, which has roots from C5 and 6, it gives rise to nerve to subclavius, which is not shown here, and the suprascapular nerve. Now, what does the suprascapular nerve do? Remember, you guys, when I taught you the scapula and I told you that we have a foramen on the top of the scapula, so we call it the suprascapular foramen, and there is a nerve enters in it called suprascapular nerve, and that nerve needs to supply people here. So who is sitting here up and down? The supraspinatus and infraspinatus. All right, so this is what we mean by the suprascapular nerve. All right, so these are the branches of the superior trunk. Now, what about the branches of the cords? Now, you guys, we have lateral names. Now, we have names of nerves that starts with lateral. We have nerve starts with medial, and then we have terminal branches that are very important, that are going to continue their journey with us to the arm and hand. And those guys, we need to know who is coming from where. All right, now let's start with the easy thing. The lateral cord is gonna give you two nerves that you already know that they are having the letter lateral, and because this is lateral cord, it gives you the lateral pectoral nerve that used to give you supply to the pectoralis major. And lateral root of median nerve, this is something new to you, but I will explain it in more details, that your median nerve, guys, is formed by a lateral root from the lateral cord and a medial root from the medial cord. All right, so that makes the median nerve getting roots from all of them. So now you have lateral root of lateral cord, medial root of medial cord. So by now you know that lateral pectoral nerve and lateral root of median nerve. And once we do that, we are going to form a letter M. This letter M is very important, guys, because that will help you to identify the structures on cadavers. So letter M is basically having lateral root, medial root, so that will give you median nerve. So this is your median nerve. All right, now what is the lateral limb of the letter M? It is your musculocutaneous nerve. We're gonna talk about that as we proceed. And the medial one is gonna be the ulnar nerve. So by now that was from the lateral cord, all right, and that is from the medial cord. So we have three people here, three friends. One is making a deal with the other two, which is the median nerve. It's uniting them and holding its hand into both of them. But one was coming from the lateral cord and one is coming from the medial cord. All right, so with that, you will know that we have lateral pectoral nerve that you already know, lateral root of median nerve coming from the lateral cord, and then the musculocutaneous nerve coming from the lateral cord. So that will take me to the next nerve or cord, which is the medial cord. So you already know the medial pectoral nerve that supplies the pectoralis minor and major. You already know that we have medial root of median nerve. You already know that this is the other friend of median nerve, which is the ulnar nerve. And I'm going to introduce you to two extra nerves that have the letter medial, which is medial cutaneous nerve of the arm and medial cutaneous nerve of the forearm. Now you might ask yourself, now why do I have medial cutaneous nerve of arm and forearm and no one mentioned anything about the lateral part of my arm? All right, this is very simple, because if this is your body, guys, and this is your brachial plexus, you have a separate nerve for the cutaneous innervation of your arm. You have a separate nerve for cutaneous innervation of the forearm, but you don't have a separate name laterally, because the branches, the terminal branches of your brachial plexus is gonna take care of the lateral aspect of your arm and forearm. What do you mean by that? I will tell you. What do I mean by that? If you think about your lateral aspect of your arm and forearm, I want you to know, guys, that when we formed the letter M, we had here the lateral limb was musculocutaneous, the medial limb was the ulnar, and here we have median. Musculocutaneous, you guys, we call it musculocutaneous because this nerve, it runs as muscular branch. It gives the muscles of the anterior compartment of the arm. It gives branches to the coracobrachialis. Anyone you have a letter brachialis on it, you would think about the musculocutaneous nerve. It pierces the coracobrachialis, it supplies people in the anterior part of your arm, and then it finishes here. Okay, let's say the muscles, coracobrachialis, brachialis, and biceps. These are the three muscles, you have them in front of your arm. And this muscle, once it's done its job, it's gonna pierce the fascia and it will come here superficially as lateral cutaneous nerve of the forearm. So that is already fulfilled by musculocutaneous nerve. So we don't have a separate nerve for that. Now what about the arm? You guys know that you have your deltoid here and the axillary nerve is already taking care of this part. So the axillary nerve will take care of the upper part of your arm. So the superior lateral cutaneous nerve of your arm is already coming from the axillary nerve. So you don't need a separate nerve. Now, what about the lower part of my lateral aspect of my arm? Remember, what are your terminal branches? The terminal branches and the very important branches, you guys, that are going to continue our journey all the way until we finish the upper limb are the musculocutaneous, the median, ulnar, and we also have axillary and radial. All right. Now, who's remaining now? Your ulnar nerve is coming in the ulnar side. I don't have it. Musculocutaneous, I know it comes here and then it gives lateral cutaneous nerve of the forearm. Axillary is giving the upper part. Now, who's left for us? It's the radial nerve. So radial nerve, you guys, is gonna give you the cutaneous innervation of the lower part of the lateral aspect of your arm. That's why we don't have cutaneous branches coming from the brachial plexus. They are already fulfilled by our terminal branches. All right, and that can come to you in exam question, and they might ask you what is the cutaneous innervation of the lateral part of your forearm, or upper part of your arm laterally, or lateral lower part of your arm. So you need to know that upper lateral part of the arm is axillary, upper lower lateral aspect of the arm is radial, lateral cutaneous nerve of the forearm is musculocutaneous, but the medial cutaneous nerve of the arm and medial cutaneous nerve of the forearm are coming separately from the brachial plexus, from the medial cords of the brachial plexus. That's why I have 5 branches of the medial cord: the medial pectoral, the medial root of median nerve, medial cutaneous nerve of the arm, medial cutaneous nerve of the forearm, and then the ulnar nerve. And it makes sense that the ulnar nerve runs from the medial side because your ulna is medial, so it goes to it. And it also makes sense that the other branches are coming laterally, and then you're gonna find that the radial nerve comes down and then it runs laterally, and we're going to talk about that, and we will see how it runs on the radial groove. We already talked about that. We're going to talk about how it runs to go to the lateral epicondyle and how it will become to the radial side as we reach the forearm. All right, so radial and axillary nerves are branches of posterior cord. Now we know that the lateral pectoral nerve, lateral root of median nerve, and musculocutaneous nerves are branches of lateral cord. And now we know all the branches of medial cord. Now how can we remember the posterior cord? Remember that the important branches you already know, axillary nerve and radial nerve, are coming from the posterior cord. All right. Now, how can you remember the remaining? Remember that, you guys, already we talked about the subscapular nerve, upper and lower, when we talked previously in the muscles of the shoulder region, and scapular and pectoral. All right, we talked about the subscapular upper and lower, and we also talked about the thoracodorsal nerve, or the nerve to latissimus dorsi. Those nerves, we know them, but we don't recall that they belong to any group. So anything comes to your mind will fall under the posterior cord. All right. Now let's recap and let's see how these will become very easily to remember. As we recap, remember that we said we have 2 branches of the roots: dorsal scapular, because it's very near to the dorsal aspect and those muscles, the rhomboids and the levator, the long thoracic nerve that comes out of C5, 6, and 7. Remember that we have 2 branches of the superior trunk or upper trunk, SUB, suprascapular and nerve to subclavius, and then we will have the cords. We have 3, 5, and 5, the 3 lateral pectoral, lateral root of median nerve, and musculocutaneous nerve. Medially, we have all medial people, medial pectoral, medial root of median nerve, medial cutaneous nerve of the arm, medial cutaneous nerve of the forearm, and the last one is the ulnar. And it makes sense that this is the ulnar. Now, who is remaining in the posterior? I remember that we took previously the thoracodorsal nerve, and we didn't mention it belonging to any group. I remember that we mentioned upper and lower subscapular nerve, and we didn't say that it belongs to any group, so that will all fall under the umbrella of the posterior cord. And the last two, axillary and radial, the people who go to the arm, the people who are related to the humerus, the one who's going to wrap around the surgical neck, and the one that's going to be closely to the radial groove. If I have fracture, I will injure them. Those guys are coming from the posterior cord. All right.